Welcome to Book Club for Movies, everybody, for January 25th, the week of that day. I'm Ryan Miller, and he's Matt Amberg.
I'm going to stay that.
And this week, we're doing what we said we'd do last week. So, if you tuned in 3 weeks ago, it was Loving Vincent, I think we dropped. We said we were going to do.
That's the plan. I'm hoping that you watched it.
That's how I like to start, with a who knows. I ran into some technical difficulties last week that further pushed it out. So here we are this week doing Loving Vincent. So yes, surprise, Matt. We're going to do the movie.
We did it.
You said we would.
All right. Well,
On Book Club for Movies, where we watch one movie a week and talk about it here on the show today. And you can do the same if you want to find us at podcast@bookclubformovies.com or Facebook and Twitter. And let us know what you think about movies we've done, will do, are doing this week. Loving Vincent, Matt always starts with a synopsis. Go ahead and try.
Oh, I will give it I won't say my all, but like some. I'll give it my some.
Give it your sum. Do it.
All right, here we go. The sum of my parts. All right. Loving Vincent, coming at you an hour and 43 minutes. Written by Dorada Kobila, Hugh Welchman, and Jacek Daniel. Directed by Dorada Kobila and Hugh Welchman. Starring Douglas Booth, Chris O'Dowd, Jerome Flynn, Robert Gulacek, Saoirse Ronan. Have to always think about that one before I say it. Helen
Nice.
McCrory.
Good one.
Yeah, it's Swarzy. Saoirse.
Now you're going to have issues.
It's never. Here is your Book Club for Movie synopsis for Loving Vincent. A year after Vincent van Gogh has supposedly taken his own life, a letter he had written to his brother is discovered. Tasked by his father, the postman, to deliver the final letter, Armand Rouland travels throughout France, investigating Van Gogh's final days.
Armand Rouland. I like it.
Armand Rouland.
I'm going to mess it up from here on out.
Rouland. I don't even know if he's a real person.
Okay, so that's maybe the first thing we should talk about is our backgrounds with things, this movie being one, but also post-impressionism being another.
Okay.
You recommended this movie, and you live with Beth. So I'm going to say you're the professional here.
You are going to be wrong.
What drove you to either watch or suggest or talk about this thing?
Yeah, no, this was a case of I try to find things occasionally that Beth might like, because oftentimes I pick movies to watch and I'm like, I don't care if you like it, I'm watch it, and then she either watches it or doesn't, and you know she's pretty chill on that. Like she doesn't, you know.
I feel like she's completely aware of this tact as well. Like, he's throwing me a bone this week. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. she knows. But this was one. Yeah, she's an artist by trade, and a good one, a darn good one.
Yeah, if I do say so.
Yeah, she's. I mean, she has successfully won a number of contests and is been recognized in her circles.
And if you're thinking art contest, so am I, right? You know what those are like. Where it's basically that scene from the Office where everybody doesn't show up and goes, and then there's a bunch of like jerks at a really small gallery going, well, this seems very poorly done. And then close to what I was picturing.
Then they fart in their own hand. But so it was a combination of that, and then the fact that the movie, so 65,000 frames that were not just drawn but were oil painted in the style of Vincent van Gogh, basing things off of his artwork, using the colors he used, finding artists that were able to essentially counterfeit to a point some of his pieces, because they use the piece as the launching point for the story, and they do it like scene by scene by scene. You get like every sequence of the movie is kicked off by something he painted, and it's not like we're going to stop and show you the painting. It's people recreated it and then added their brush strokes to animate it. And I was super fascinated by that. Like that to me is I love animation as it is. So animation is always going to be something that I'm interested in, especially when you get to, the old school Disney style hand drawn pieces where, people are flipping through pages back and forth as they draw. And this is something on like that level with like 10 times more to it, like so much more. Man.
Yeah. I was going to say, if any of that doesn't sound like it's reductive, it still is the weird thing. Like there's no description of how this movie was made that isn't reductive, I think, essentially what it comes down to. Because even what you said, even after all of that, it doesn't take into account that I guess you did mention they are drawing from his paintings. In fact, in some cases, they're creating characters out of, paintings that he did. What's the eternity? Okay.
It's the eternity.
The other thing I was going to mention is that I know very, very little about all of this. I took an Art 1010, whatever that was, 20 years ago now, where I'm sure Van Gogh, but Van Gogh, are we going to go back and forth on that pronunciation accidentally for the show?
No, I don't care.
Okay. I'll try the right way. I am going to.
Say it however you want, man.
I know.
He ain't going to come back and get you. And even if he did, he probably wouldn't hear it.
Burn.
Yeah, stupid idiot.
So
get an ear, why don't you?
They do take some of his paintings and they make characters out of those guys that aren't necessarily the characters from the painting, obviously. But even then, it doesn't take into account that they started with a film essentially still. Lots of green screen, sure.
Yeah.
But they shot the thing with the actors. They brought some actors in and their likenesses are used for the film. I guess in that way, they're not completely taking the paintings. They're taking the likenesses of the actors in the paintings done in that style and then animating. But that film is then turned into an outline that's projected onto a canvas and then, yes, recreated. The entire painting, they're not just using Van Gogh's painting, they're using recreations of his paintings.
Right.
To animate with, yes, 1 frame at a time, even though it is 12 frames per second, I guess, what it came out to. If it's a painting from Van Gogh that was taken at a different time of the year or season or day, they've not just switched it. They haven't just done the light dark theme on your iPhone or something to the painting.
Basically what they did.
Reference other paintings that he or contemporaries did in that area at that time and changed it based on that. They're also, since they're moving through some of these scenes in a 3D space, they're taking different points of view. So trying to recreate something that he did from a different point of view in the same spot.
Right. And keeping in mind, all of this is being done specifically in his style, which they were very, very, very picky about having to find artists that could do strokes like him, along with the color palette, finding the exact same colors to match. Like that was another thing, was going as far as trying to find the right pigments, which, green ain't just green. There's how many shades of green, and then which greens did he use in that. So when they migrated things from winter to summer, because this movie takes place basically during the summer, they had to figure out what were the colors of Paris that he used, or the areas that were being that would be a like area. What were those colors so that they could match it?
And this is where I had to read up some. In fact, so if I ever throw out an actually during this thing, it's something I learned today, probably. So
great, because I didn't learn anything.
Okay. I'll credit to Wikipedia, I guess. But when you speak of colors, also, it's post-impressionistic, meaning impressionism being, when everybody was like, hey, it's an impression of a thing, Monet, like this doesn't look exactly like it looks, but still adheres to some type of coloring that is more naturalistic, I guess. But then post-impressionists come along, and I'm sure this is obviously all named after the fact and given years and stuff like that and defined by painters like Van Gogh. But after the fact, these post-impressionists come and are like, what if we can use I watched a couple things on YouTube that I probably should shout out, but they're out there. A few of them are super bad. But like this blue line on a chair, there's no such thing. Like if you're going to look at that thing as that blue line on that item right there that you're looking at. But so post-impressionists started using these wild colors and these really weird spots, green in the face, stuff like that. And number one, I love the idea of, impressionists or even just, art critics at the time looking at that blue line and just being like morally offended in a way. That's always been fantastic to me.
They're baffled by the audacity of somebody putting a color where it doesn't belong. Like, you filthy monster.
But it's all you had back then, right? It's like, it's the
censorship and the gatekeeping.
It's great. It's just a fantastic version of that. And it's somehow, when we're saying they're taking from colors that, Van Gogh was using, they're taking from these ideas, these crazy, outlandish greens and blues on the normal things. This was all going somewhere, I promise.
I believe you. So far, you've said good things.
And while all of this still, I feel like, is underselling the movie, it is a movie, and it was written, and it does adhere to direction at times. I want to say they've taken some very cool cues from the paintings, right? Like when people are talking, it's very painterly in its framing of things. That seems redundant, but what was it, Armand Rouland?
Yeah, Rouland.
When he's featured very early on, in fact, maybe that's what you were saying, is some of the scenes begin with the paintings themselves, kind of, in a way.
Yeah. It's definitely a number of the scenes, almost all of any establishing shot, really, I think, is referencing a painting of his, and like directly, and they move into it.
In it, yeah. And with the people, that takes the form of kind of portraits, right? Like, think of Fallout, actually, in a way. When you start talking to somebody and it locks into that view where it's just a medium shot up, like,
I don't want to set the world on fire. That's
the framing that takes place immediately. And they do that with, various moments in the film when people are talking. And you're right, with the landscapes or the establishing shots, they are those paintings. But that's not everything. Like, obviously, they need to fill in some of the spaces in between. And I think that's where this movie has a credited director. It's not just Vincent van Gogh. This film has a credited writer because there is a story that goes beyond that. And how much do you want to get into the story?
I mean, we can get into, I think, the kind of the basics, the nuts and bolts of it. There's not the basic kind of around this is the story came from and was genesis from Dorada Kabila. She got very, very interested and kind of obsessed to a degree with Van Gogh and his letters that he had written at the end of his life that were released. And that's kind of where the movie comes from, is her kind of stringing together this concept of like the last little bits of his life. And there's never been, as far as I know, and I actually asked Beth about this, was there ever a question about how he died? And to her memory, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like everybody knew what happened. And this is kind of more of I think an exhibition in showing, in almost doing a postmodernist version of, or post-impressionist version of his letters. Taking the paintings, turning those into life, and then taking his writing and turning those into a story, with a little bit of pizzazz.
Okay, I like that definition maybe better than what I'm going to say for the rest of the show.
Okay.
Because strictly speaking, the story is about as by the numbers as it gets.
Totally.
I think.
Absolutely. It is.
And it's not one I necessarily would have chosen for this story itself. Armand Rouland is the son of a postman who was very close to Van Gogh. It's Chris O'Dowd's character, but
yeah,
you might recognize the paintings. There's several of them.
It's actually, and I think I don't remember if it's called The Postman.
Possibly, I guess. No, he has a name, or at least they knew who to attribute it to.
Yeah, he definitely had a name. Like the postman himself had a name, but I think the piece was called the portrait of Postman Joseph Rouland.
Okay, so there's several of those too is the thing. And maybe the other thing we'll mention why we know some of this is because the credits to this film are maybe my favorite of any film ever.
So good. It was I was so excited about that too. It was very exciting, actually.
You not only get the, like when they do biopics or whatever at the end, you get that picture of the actor next to the real person and a little blurb that's like, this is what happened to this person, whatever. At the end of this one, you get the actual Van Gogh painting, you get the mimicked painting of the actor next to it, you get where the actual Van Gogh painting exists now, like what museum it's in or private collection, sometimes it says. And then it shows you several examples of that, because I think it said Van Gogh did 800 lifetime around paintings.
Yeah, in less than 10 years or something too.
Right.
Some crazy.
So it shows many examples of sometimes the same person that he painted. So it shows a lot of the postman. His son, who I think is the first example of a painting that Van Gogh did, but they create a character for him. Like, I don't believe that painting was actually the postman's son in real life.
Right. I believe you are correct.
They do that with a couple characters in the movie. There are characters with defined roles and lines and whatever arcs in the film.
And they existed in Van Gogh's life, but not in
the way they exist in the movie.
The painting. Right.
Yeah. But the story is basically that son delivering a letter from
Van Gogh's brother,
right? Yeah,
or
to
it's supposed to be to his brother.
To his brother, okay.
It's from Van Gogh to his brother. Yeah.
Okay, and this is the first thing I'll say about the beginning of the movie. All three of us, I watched this with my wife and my daughter, a little lost pretty quickly on, and it didn't last long, but still, the first maybe 10 to 15 of that movie, we didn't have a real good grasp of who these people were or what they were doing. And I kind of got the feeling that maybe that was something that was going to come along later, or maybe even wasn't that important. But to me, it's a smaller part maybe of my issue with, again, this story that I don't think really fits and is really by the numbers in the end. It's basically him doing an investigation of Van Gogh as told by the people he interacted with, the daughter of the guy who ran the place where he stayed, his doctor who he also stayed with and was an artist, Gachet.
A failed artist, the Salieri of his day.
His daughter, who it's intimated that they had a thing going on, the boatman that gave Van Gogh some rides with the Gachet girl, Saoirse
Ronan.
And basically it's that, like, he's trying to piece together what happened, because, and it starts really early on in those first, 10 minutes where we're not really following stuff. Chris O'Dowd's character says, like, what? Like, look at this letter from 6 weeks ago before he died. He's perfectly fine and happy. And then 6 weeks later, he kills himself. Something doesn't add up. And I'm like, dude, that totally adds up, man. Like, there's nothing.
6 weeks is a lot of time. Like, I gotta say.
So a bit of it hinges on that. And they call it melancholia, I think, in the film, right? I think we're probably talking about some form of depression.
Yeah.
And I will give them credit. They do very quickly talk about the ear episode and debunk a little bit about it, but also put it in context and try to dismiss it, because that's the son says, how is that a mystery? Like, that doesn't make sense. And then he's like, well, the ear thing didn't happen how you heard, and it was just an episode and all this stuff. They try, I don't think it really works, but it's good to have that in context. I think it's also good to get it out of the way at the beginning, rather than wait for the ear thing the whole movie.
Right, totally,
that's
absolutely.
The thing everybody knows.
Because it was not at all a part of this movie. It was not part of this story.
So that was smart. I'll give him that. But again, at the very beginning, that statement kind of carries through. There's a lot of moments that are like, it just doesn't add up. And I'm like, no, dude, it adds up. Like, that makes sense. They try to create a mystery where I think maybe there isn't one.
And I think that, so what I got out of this after watching it was, it's less of, like, for me, it was less of a mystery and more of some people just didn't want to accept the fact that, and I think this is actually common when somebody takes their own life. There are people around them that knew them, that saw them. He was such a nice boy. He was so sweet. He never said anything like that. You hear that all the time. And I think that's what the movie is going for overall is the fact that the people around him couldn't understand what was going on and why he would do such a thing. But you're not really, and the only person that actually ever feels that way is Armand, except he's overruled like every time by everybody around him who's like, no, there's no way, except you get to the doctor who's kind of like, there was a way.
It's a really weird trip for Armand, because he starts out not believing Chris O'Dowd's character, his father, that's saying something's mysterious. He's like, no, that's kind of fine. Then he goes on the trip, hears more points of view about the man, and then begins to think something doesn't add up until he has the conversation basically with maybe Saoirse Ronan and then the doctor, where he goes back to being like, oh yeah, I guess he probably did just kill himself.
Yeah.
It's a weird trip for that character, honestly.
It is. I mean, it's a like, I don't think this is a bad movie. I think this is this is a fine movie in terms of the story and the plot line and everything. It's fairly middle of the road, fairly by the numbers, but that's not why you're watching this movie. I don't think.
Not at all. I'm just disappointed that it does appear to sideline it some of the time, because there's like entire scenes where one of those characters from a painting, it is the Eternity one, again, I forget the full title, where he's trying to figure out what happened, and he talks to this guy, and that guy from the chair gets up and talks about like the angle of the bullet. And while I like the character, he's like this really rattled, like crazy old man, like I like how it's portrayed and watching it, but it's basically a CSI scene, and it's really close to another one where he goes to the spot where Vincent shot himself and like reenacts the bullet and how he held the gun and the fact that he shot himself in the stomach. Why would somebody do that? And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't need that scene. It's like that scene was the only scene they could think of to have in the field where he shot himself, because he did a painting of it.
Right. At Eternity's Gate, I think is
at Eternity's Gate. Thank you.
It was okay. So this is kind of funny, and there's this is a weird connection, but it was that sequence. So this weekend we watched another movie that Beth had never seen before. And it is significantly like this is an apples and oranges thing, okay, in terms of the quality of the movie itself. But we watched a movie this weekend where that exact type of situation occurs, where somebody is murdered and they're trying to figure out, well, how did it happen? It couldn't have happened any other way. It had to have happened this way. And then they're going to reenact it. And so you've got all these people reenacting this scene, and watching that threw me back into this, and I went, oh yeah, this is how you do that.
Oh, I know what movie you're talking about.
Yeah, it was 12 Angry Men.
Right.
Yeah, and in 12 Angry Men, they do exactly that, right? Like there's a whole sequence where Henry Fonda and I can't even remember who the other three people are that get involved.
There's a lot. There's
like
12.
Yeah. But they get to the point of like the angle of the stabbing and all this stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, they tried to do this in Loving Vincent, but this is how you actually do it.
Well, it's kind of the converse even, because that movie is about, and this is very easily just going to turn into us talking about 12 Angry Men.
Nope.
But that movie is about what each of those men brings to the story, or how that man and who he is colors his interpretation of.
Interpretation, yeah.
Vincent, and this is the part I did like that I wish there was more of, and I think was sidetracked by some of those CSI scenes, is very much about learning about the man through the point of, in fact, contradicting point of views of all these people.
Right.
That part's great. And I like movies that do that, because it paints, I knew I was going to do that, play on words on accident at some point. I just didn't think it would be so soon. It paints a picture, a more fully realized picture of a person, when you do hear what different people thought about them from these different points of view. Yeah. So I like that. I just don't like the sidelines, but actually what it ends up making me wish was that this movie was less a murder mystery and either a documentary, with these scenes being kind of, in fact, this is very much just me and what I bring to this, it being a documentary that kind of explained the place in history of post-impressionism and Vincent van Gogh, and all that stuff, and then had these little, not interstitials, but these they would essentially be the reenactments that show up sometimes in movies like that. Like, I think that could have worked really well. I understand why that's not quite the same thing, because you're not fully immersed in a way. But again, that's just a history lesson at that point. That's what, that's me. That's my problem. Or I think I almost would have preferred it was just a straight chronological telling. And when I think about that, I think, well, if they had done that, they really would have had to develop each and every one of those characters. Whereas at this point, we got Armand, who's kind of goes through an arc, and in hearing about Vincent from all these different people,
pretty light, definitely too. It's a pretty light arc. He doesn't really
absolutely, yeah. Like he's Vincent's friend, but I don't think, did they ever meet? I guess they did, because he walks.
But as a kid, I think as a young man, they knew each other, but not like he wasn't.
No, he runs in and like sees Vincent after he gets his ear cut off. So they were.
That's right.
They were friends in some way, but yeah, it calls into question his friendship, and then but he's a good fighter, and then he defends this special kid against some bullies, and Vincent was also bullied. You're right. It's a very slight arc, but I think if they had done a more straightforward chronological telling of this story, they would have had to do a lot more work on the characters. So in the end, this kind of almost seems like a cop-out. And I'm being way more negative than I want to be on this thing. This thing is a must-see. Like, it needs to be seen. You should watch it. And the last 15 minutes are everything I wanted it to be.
Outstanding, yeah.
So I don't want to be too down on it. It's just that weird kind of CSI framing.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here is that you could probably edit this movie a little bit and remove some of that framing, and the movie works better. I actually love the idea of this not being I'm going to investigate him to investigate and question everything, but more of I would have actually taken a history lesson as well. Documentary style would have been cool, but even this, if you take out the there's a mystery here, something wasn't right. If they had just gone with we've got this letter and it's a bittersweet movie about him trying to get a letter to his brother, that works. I don't, and having Armand go through all the same stuff, talking to these people about what happened, that's all totally legit. It doesn't need to have the CSI, the that aspect to it. I think that was a little misplaced to maybe bulk up the movie, but I feel like that's maybe the wrong thing to do here is putting in a whole bunch of extra bulk.
Yeah, it is. It's just strange. I know that's a harder movie to write, so I can see
probably
why. And I know, I mean, I get the impression that, again, they really wanted to
pre or post impression.
I don't know. I guess current, yes, impression that they wanted, but after seeing the movie, so post impression. I don't know. they wanted to highlight mental illness and specifically the mental illness of Vincent van Gogh, and they did that by kind of all these different points of view of him. And since it was this melancholia, where he seems fine and isn't. It's obviously a valid tact. I'm not saying it's not. I just wish it was stronger written, I guess, just period.
No, and that's okay. I think that's not the wrong thing to say here. I think that I'm giving you a pass. No, I think that the overall everything behind this is all in the right place. That you have people that clearly love and appreciate the man and his work. The amount of care and love that went into making the movie is there, and I don't think that the script does anything necessarily to change that. It just doesn't do anything to accentuate it. It doesn't. The script doesn't shine here, whereas kind of everything else does. And the unfortunate thing is when you have everything else shining, but you don't have the script itself, you kind of have a little more style over substance, but you still get a lot of substance here. That's kind of the kicker to it, right? Is that you still get lots
literal,
yeah, you still get some real literal kickers. There's some donkeys.
I meant substance, but yes.
Oh, got it.
Substance kickers. You get them literally.
You watch this and you go, yeah, you know what? I'm done with heroin.
I'm cutting off my ear, but in a good way.
Yeah. These pills that I'm popping, I'm done. Ear gone though.
Okay, I've got maybe a heady question here. Do you want to shout out anything else?
Lena Headey?
I don't know. Is she in this movie?
She's not, but fun fact about her, because it came up, Jerome Flynn, who plays the Doctor, most well-known at this point, at least in the States, as one of the characters from Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Was I guess in a relationship with Lena Headey at one point, and they had a very bad breakup, and because of that they kind of refused to work with each other on Game of Thrones, and so characters that I guess were at some point supposed to kind of cross paths, they never did.
Wow, that did get heady for a second.
Lena Headey.
Very nice.
She's not as she, everybody is going to remember her sadly from Game of Thrones when they should be remembering her from being awesome in the Judge Dredd movie. Not Judge Dredd, but Dredd with Carl Urban.
Yeah, I don't. My first heady question was going to be who's Lena Headey, but now I think I might know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Mama. Not in this movie.
The actual heady question here, this being a film about, this premier post-impressionist, this person that everybody knows, and that style or movement being, again, from my limited knowledge, being about kind of communicating so much, not even with so little, but about, it's almost a more is more thing, because you see the brushstrokes, you see movement where there is none, you feel, you interpret something possibly differently than anybody else. But there's a lot of quotes in the movie where Van Gogh is talking about what he wanted to communicate with his paintings. Like, he wanted you to see the soul of the person he was painting, not just like a realist, like the person, like, oh, look how real this looks or something. And I kind of wanted the movie to do the same. And I know this is a huge ask and a heady ask, like I said, but I wanted the movie to be something more. And I think when we talk about the story kind of being by the numbers, that's a little bit all that's left in a way. So did you gather anything more from this thing, like a greater than the sum of its parts thing in this film?
I don't know. I can't say that I did, honestly. I don't think, like, and maybe it's just because of where I was coming at it from. That might be something where a follow-up viewing might elicit more. But there's an absolute beauty to this film. Like, there is. But yeah, I don't think so. I think I kind of ended up maybe like...
It's a huge ask. It's on one level, it's almost asking them to create a new impressionism, to create a new movement or something like that. And I think there's a smaller version of that that's just, did you communicate the spirit? Did you make something like Van Gogh wanted to make?
And I think to that point, yes, I would have to say that just assumptions here that, I mean, that's something that I think Van Gogh would have been interested in. But on the same token, he, again, blew through painting. Like, he was painting like crazy. So coming out further on in his life, if he had not committed suicide, what would he have thought? Yeah, I mean, that's another really excellent question. Would he have even stayed in that style, or would he have transitioned into something different altogether?
I think he was. That's one thing I do remember, is that when he, in his Paris time, he was closing in on something new or experimenting with something new towards the end of his life. So that is a question they try to tackle, because one of the reasons is I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No, you're good.
Because Armand actually moves through these different paintings, and the painting of Armand, since his character is taken from a painting, is not done in the style of a lot of the paintings he inhabits. So he is having to be shifted, which is, again, by these mimicking artists.
Super cool too, by the way. That's actually one of the more novel bits is him the style shifting around him. And
it's great, because they're like, at first I was thinking, I wondered if the person they got to mimic these paintings, like, we're seeing some of their style. And no, it was that they were told to mimic Van Gogh stuff so closely that they also need to create an Armand that would have appeared in this painting.
Right.
And it's super cool. The only exception are the flashbacks, which I guess are taken from photos mostly of the time. And they're still kind of done in fact, this is a good spot to start with an answer to my heady question. They're done in a more cohesive style, but also in a more photographic style.
Yeah.
And since they are taking, again, from these actual frames of film, they are the closest to film.
Yeah, they come very, very, those ones come real close to feeling rotoscoped.
Yep. I knew you were getting, and that's exactly it too, because when watching those, and there are some very early on in the film, I'm wondering, okay, I can obviously tell this is taken from a film, rotoscoped or not. This is before I knew about the actual technique and stuff like that. Is this movie still going to end up being more than just a bunch of oil painted frames of film by the end, you know?
Yeah.
That's, I think, where I first asked that question. And with the flashbacks, it makes sense. You want that style to be cohesive. Again, they're taking from photos. And honestly, still some incredibly beautiful stuff comes from that. I think it plays really nicely with the more purely post-impressionist stuff throughout the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And those are all in black and white, too, is the strange thing. So complete lack of color. But there are moments in the flashbacks and without where those frames do, I think, cohere into something that becomes an impression of film rather than film, kind of, in a way. And not just, and again, this is what I want beyond just it, because if you make a bunch of impressionist paintings of a bunch of frames of film, look what you got. It's an impression of a film. Not exactly. That's not what I'm going for. There are moments where they need to recreate things that you can only see in film, like a reflection. And I know this might, again, betray some of my non-knowledge of art, but these kind of moments where there's a drop in a bucket, like there's this reflection of water that's like, and they spend some time on these. You can tell they want you to sit with these because the shot lasts just a little bit longer than it would normally if it were just film. But yeah, there's like a drop of water in a bucket, and kind of how that, it's not even just ripples because it's bouncing off the sides of the bucket back and forth. There's a reflection of Armand in a train window at one point that you're like, oh.
That was like mind-blowing when I saw that. I was like, what the hell?
And if you see that on its own, you might not even get what it's supposed to be. But since you know he's on a train, and since you know that might be what the shot was, you're like, okay, this could be something different. I don't think it quite transcends. Like, it's not, again, maybe that heady definition I came up with to start, but I think it does a little bit. If something can transcend a little bit into something that I think is wholly unique, and again, a must see in a whole new way if you're looking closely. So
yeah, I agree.
Okay, good. I was just curious.
All right, well, good. Wrap it up.
The movie wraps up again with, I think, the best writing of the thing, quite possibly also some of the best storytelling, filmmaking of the thing. And it's very purposefully with these conversations with Saoirse Ronan's character, with the doctor, now that he actually gets to meet with him because he's been out of town. Like, that's another thing in the movie. It's like Armand is basically biding his time by talking to all these other people until the doctor gets back and he can talk to him to get the real story. So there's a little bit, it's not convoluted. There's a little bit of contrivance, I think, maybe there. Sure. But again, it's not what you're here for. And by the end, when they actually do have some of these lines like, no detail of life was too small for him. He appreciated and loved it all. That's a great line for a painter, for the life of a painter. And they bring in a letter. Oh yeah, the doctor gives him a letter as like a letter for a letter, because he finally delivers the other one, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And that letter gives even more information. And that letter from Vincent, which, if I had to guess, was an actual, his words, as he reads through it, again, also great. It's where some of that about what he wanted to communicate is written, and it's fantastic in his words, especially. But it's signed like "Your Loving Vincent" or "Loving Vincent."
Right.
And whereas the title of the film almost seemed a little too much to be like "Loving Vincent," look, I talked to all these people, and by the end, you're loving Vincent. The fact that comes from a signature of his, like, is a self-impression of himself, of himself, a self-impression of himself.
That's right. So we're impressed. We're impressed by ourselves.
As many self-impressions are. That was pretty cool. That was like a little. Number one, it's the title of the movie. So
yeah, well, and that was the last thing I was going to mention was that the movie is a must-watch simply because they say the name of the movie.
Right. Exactly.
So you literally cannot go wrong with that.
And then it's a self-reference. It ends really nicely, and then you get that credit sequence again that I said is super great. One more thing I want to mention about the credit sequence, belying again my knowledge or incompleteness thereof. I was so sure for so long that final song was a cover of the NoFX song Vincent. But I guess Don McLean did it even before NoFX, if you can imagine such a time. So that wasn't the case, but still,
I don't know that I believe it.
It was a great ending to that film. I was like, wait, this is a cover of NoFX
in a Vincent Van Price movie, and I kept calling him Vincent Van Price. By the way, the other night I was like, I don't know what the deal was with that.
The correct pronunciation, no, that's fine.
Vincent.
It's a great movie. Watch The Thing for sure, 1,000,000%. Like, it needs to be seen. The end.
The end. All right. Yeah. What stars?
Oh, right. So yeah, yeah. Even before the end.
Well, we don't have to do stars.
Star rating.
You could do a different kind of rating. It's post-impressionism. So I don't know.
5 stars. It's a full 5 stars.
5 stars out of 7.
It's like 75%. Okay. All right. Hey, it's official rating. I can't do anything. Change it at this point.
That's pretty good.
But you can if you write us in at podcast@bookclubformovies.com. Let us know if you've seen it and what you think and what we got wrong, because it was a bunch. Next week, Matt, you gave me a whole long list of movies that we hadn't even talked about before our long list of movies that we kind of talked about last week. What are we doing next week?
Yeah, no. I have the movie next week. We're going to we're gonna go for a couple weeks here, and I think we're gonna try and do some relatively new movies that we haven't seen before.
Okay.
So next week, we're going to check out the what I can only imagine is a prequel to The Bourne Identity. Paul Greengrass directed News of the World, starring Tom Hanks.
News of the World, okay.
Yeah, News of the World pre-Bourne. It's, I think, Tom Hanks is pre-Bourne.
Like a Benjamin Button type scenario. What do we?
You're breaking up on me.
Yeah, you were breaking up too. I was trying to. This is why. Oh, I forgot to even say that my power's been going out off and on 3 times today. It hasn't technically done that yet, but we're still having issues, so that's great either way, I guess. I heard you say News of the World, and yes, I do think it's funny that you sent me both a Doug Liman and a Paul Greengrass movie to choose, not even choose from, but just that we should do at some point in the future. So
Douglas Liman.
News of the World, okay. That'll be next week. Come back. Until then, let's do a rest of the show. Oh, yeah, we got plenty of time to do that. Yeah, talk about other movies we watched during the week.
We can do the rest of the show, sure.
Do you have some? I guess I should ask before I commit. I mean, I do. So either way, you're stuck. But
yeah, I've got a couple, but nothing. I can go real fast on mine.
You need not. I'm here.
I don't need to, but okay. Nothing I watched is going to be too much worth a discussion.
Okay.
I did.
Oh boy.
I rewatched Hot Shots because I got
good job.
One night I was like, hey, you know what I haven't seen in a while. And
by which I take a couple weeks at least. Too long.
That movie.
It's a perfect film.
It's.
What can you say?
I mean, you've got Loving Vincent and Hot Shots. What else do you want in life? I don't know. That movie really, really is like I can watch that movie over and over again and still laugh at the same things that come through. Like I just nothing for whatever dumb reason. The line that kills me every single time.
Let me see if I can get it.
You'll never get this. Guesses. You will never get this.
I'll be just fine. Electrocution animation? No,
but I do love. I lost it at that. I forgot about him becoming an animated skeleton, and then the top part of his head falling well after the rest of him.
I'll never get the line. Yeah, okay. I'll never get it.
You will never get this line because it's an arbitrary, like it's one of Lloyd Bridges' throwaway lines.
Excuse me, Lloyd Bridges doesn't have a single throwaway line in any of his films.
That's true, but it's towards the end of the movie where they're all on the they're in the middle of the ocean on the aircraft carrier, and he's surrounded by the people that are deciding the timing on the last mission. And he kind of looks at his watch and he says, okay, wake me up at 5:30. And then they say something else. And he goes, and it's the follow up to that line where they're like, so we've got a few hours of this and this. And he goes, all right, I'm going to step out, grab a burger. Like, where are you going? I just love the idea that he's going to step out and grab a burger from somewhere.
Because he does. We just don't get to see it on camera.
We don't. And then I will never not laugh at the constant how every part of his body has been lost at some war.
Yep.
And he can't remember which ones. He's like Little Bighorn or something else. Which one was one without the Indians? It's like, okay.
Amazing. When you couldn't get Leslie Nielsen, you got Lloyd Bridges and found out he was as good or better sometimes.
It's unfair. Life is unfair.
And that's like that. Like, I hate myself for even saying the words possibly better than Leslie Nielsen. Like, that's how
it's tough.
Let's move on.
Don't beat yourself up.
I'm assuming the second movie is Hot Shots Part 2.
It's not. I watched Thor 2 and Iron Man 3. We're going through the Marvel Cinematic Universe and cinematically
you are.
The order of the movies chronologically to the MCU itself, minus as mentioned previous to us recording, we're not watching any of the ones that are not directly on Disney Plus. So Incredible Hulk and all that.
You're watching the Disney cut, or what do they call that? The Disney machete order?
The machete order.
Oh, gotcha.
But yeah, Thor 2 and Iron Man 3, which Iron Man 3 actually was kind of a follow-up for us because we also watched The Nice Guys, and that every time I watch it, it becomes my favorite Shane Black movie by like another order of magnitude. It may be my favorite.
Nice Guys or Iron Man 3?
Yeah, Nice Guys. Like that movie. Okay. That movie kills me in every way the right way, and what makes me so mad is that we're never going to get a sequel to it. It's set up for a sequel, but it's totally set up in the way where like we could make more, but we're never going to. And it just, oh man, that movie is so funny. But I forgot how good Iron Man 3 actually is.
Yeah, I'm glad you it appeared to jump up a couple notches because I think you were dreading going into it, and I was like, well, wait. We disagree.
Yeah, no, I hadn't seen it in forever. Same thing with Thor 2, and we talked about Thor 2, and the big issue with Dark World is that is maybe the most boring of the Marvel movies, which it's got an interesting story behind it to a point, but it's not exciting. The action sequences are all completely forgettable. The only thing anybody seems to remember about that movie is, wait, isn't that the one where Loki dies? Except no, because we knew watching in the theater that he didn't die. Like that was dumb, but yeah. Thor 2, not. It's probably in terms of quality the lowest of like it's the bottom rung of the MCU.
And this is a Thor movie, guys. I don't think you understand what Matt's doing here.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, I will still pick it over probably other movies. Maybe I don't know. We'll get there because I'm just. Again, I get it. I just don't love the Guardians movies. They're just not, but they're probably better. I'm probably going to have to suck that one up. Yeah. So that's pretty much all I got though. But Iron Man 3, man, like I knew everything that was coming up, but I actually forgot how well they kind of built up the Mandarin and all that and made him into like this kind of terrifying character in a way. And then when you meet him and he's like, oh don't hurt me. It's like, it's what a great turn. And I remember people being so angry about it. And
were they really? Yeah.
But the fact that it's supposed to be an actor and not even a good actor, he's just supposed to be an actor that can't do anything else in life because he's that much of a like he's a drunk and he's an idiot.
Trevor, right?
Yeah. His freaking name is like Trevor Slattery or something. Like it works on every respect, especially then following up and realizing that Killian is the one behind the whole thing. And Killian doesn't care. Like it actually fits in such a perfect way, along with not only is that fascinatingly like done well, but it's also kind of an interesting reminder about Ben Kingsley playing Gandhi, too. So
he's the Queen's actor. What does it go? I don't know.
He's
great.
Sir Ben Gandhi.
He's an amazing actor. Trevor, one for the books.
Sir Pentico.
Iron Man 3 is up there for me.
Iron Man 3 is good.
How high would you put Iron Man 3? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
in the whole,
did it climb a lot of rungs, or is it just kind of?
Oh yeah. It definitely did. It definitely climbed, because I had it pretty much bottom of the barrel right along with Thor, like with Thor 2.
Oof,
it was just not. It was just, but this definitely, like, I would take an Iron Man 3. Yeah, I'll say it, over either of the Guardians films. It easily jumps those.
It's such a different movie too. Like, I get why the resistance sometimes, because it, especially for the time, I feel like broke a lot of the Marvel mold, I think, with that thing. But in a great way. Yeah, no, with you now.
Yeah, it's totally unique in comparison to everything else, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. I'm excited to hear more about your trip through the movies.
I think that movie also opened up a little bit to what the MCU could be. Like, I don't know that we get, and people might say better off, I don't know that we get Ant-Man without Iron Man 3. I don't know that we get the Ant-Man that we got anyways. I don't know that we get some of the more, like, I will say, I think Iron Man 3 also, kind of the way it's filmed a little bit, seemed to, rewatching it, inform the later action sequences. When you watch that movie and then watch the movies after it, the action sequences definitely, those are Shane Black action sequences. And I totally feel like there's a little bit of love that was given to that by especially Infinity War, which, again, not the best of the final two, but
I'd be interested, because the Russos very much established in their own right and kind of have their own signature. But yeah, that's a good.
I feel like this movie gave them something. I feel like it gave the other Marvel movies after this like almost not I don't want to say a template, because it's clearly not in everything, but I feel like there's people, the people that directed the rest of them watched this movie and went, oh, okay, that was actually pretty good. Like that
we could do that.
Yeah, well, that
yeah, you can do that now.
And I think it comes down a lot to like that whole final action sequence, which is way better than I remembered it being, with all the the Iron Man army and all that coming out of nowhere. Like, that was real cool.
And you get Cheadle in there, and you finally get Shane Black, like buddy copping it up for a bit,
Oh yeah,
might have been the best to ever do it.
Yeah, no, which we talked about also offline, that the movie basically becomes a PG-13 Lethal Weapon,
right?
In all the good ways.
Don Cheadle's like, I'm the right age for this.
Like, I'm exactly the age I should be for this nonsense.
That line needs to show up. Come on, Shane Black.
Good old.
If you're listening still, I know he's fallen off, but
he's a big fan. He follows us. He texts me. Like, what do you think? What did you think about Predators? And I'm like, I don't know, Shane.
I told you not to use this number, but it's,
I thought I'll go to Rotten Tomatoes and
here's my review on.
We'll get it up there.
Okay. Can you help me out with a few things, with 3 things specifically? I told you this was coming, but I did the canonical, popular, everybody knows, Final Fantasy movie trilogy.
Yes. Enemy Within? That's not right.
It's kind of, but it's Spirits Within.
Spirits Within.
and then Advent Children, which I think maybe came before Spirits Within.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe. Nope, don't think so. I think Spirits Within was first.
The year is not the important part here, but you looked that up, and then Final Fantasy 15 Kingsglaive, and or whatever the full title of that movie is. Upon mentioning Advent Children, I feel like you had some experience with that thing. So, what happened, both to you, but also in that movie, I guess?
Yeah, so Spirits Within came out first. That was in 2001.
Really? Interesting.
Advent Children looks like it hit in 2006.
No, that makes perfect sense now that I think about it. Because Spirits Within, let's go in that order because I feel like you've most recently mentioned Spirits Within. Spirits Within, I remember, I've only seen it once before when it came out or shortly thereafter at home. I remember the reaction against that being, well, this isn't what we expected at all, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
But when I watched it, not having a problem with it, and here's the big key to this entire conversation, never played a Final Fantasy game, so I don't necessarily have that connection or reverence for them in that way. I don't have anything against them. In fact, I fully expect someday I will. But actually, it's not true. I played a little bit of the Final Fantasy VII Remake at PAX, however many years ago that was now when they had it there. And honestly, if I do play one, that might be the one.
That's definitely the one that you should play. Yeah. 200%.
And so that's where I'm coming from. But I remember the first time I watched Spirits Within, not having a huge problem with it, like not thinking it was bad even. So watching it again this time, I had the same reaction. Like, I don't think that's a bad movie. Is it not what people were expecting? Is that the problem most of all?
I think it was one of those things where it was fully animated, but it was animated in a way that hadn't really been done before either. That was an early all CGI movie that was like a full-on released in the theaters movie. I don't remember what came before that in terms of full CGI like that. And not only that, but it was full CGI with major stars in the movie.
And I remember what we did mention last time we talked about it. Like there were moments watching that where I can't even tell it's CGI. That looks like a real person on the screen right now. Like that's how amazing it was back then. You were correct. Not anymore.
No, the animation for that movie does not hold up well.
But it's not horrible. Like again, and it doesn't take me out of the movie. Like it's fine.
It could have been much worse, significantly so. Yeah, I mean, this is like it holds up probably better in terms of what it is than like Polar Express.
Sure, I would put it above Polar Express. That's true. But I think overall the story is coherent. It's easy to follow. I think it falls apart at the end more than anything a little bit. Like it does get a little more nebulous, which in a way I applaud that when people are like, hey, let's do an ending where we don't spell out everything or tie up every single bow, or maybe you got to read something on the internet to fully figure it out. Right. I'm kind of okay with that. Like I want that to be a thing, obviously. I don't know that it's super executed on well in this case. Yeah. But it's not the worst thing. I don't know.
No, I mean, it's whatever. I mean, I honestly, I can't, there's not a lot to it for me to remember thinking that, wow, this movie, like it was a landmark video game movie for like a couple of reasons, probably based on the cast, the fact that you ended up with a Final Fantasy license. But yeah, I mean, it was overall for me, I think it's a pretty forgettable sci-fi movie.
Would you put it above or below the next movie, Advent Children?
I don't remember Advent Children.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
You apparently don't want to remember it.
Well, I thought there would be maybe a little bit more to grasp on to if you hadn't seen. And wouldn't this be a weird turn of events? If because I had seen Spirits Within and I could enjoy the movie without having played a Final Fantasy, I expected to maybe be able to do the same with the second movie, where no, you really like that is a Final Fantasy VII fan service through and through and through and through and through.
It's like the direct sequel to it, right?
Yes, I think that's what it ended up being. Yeah, I have since listened to a couple podcasts themselves on the thing, and yeah, I guess that's the thing. Even then, You know, I probably if I do play the remake, I'll probably watch this, you know, just to actually understand it. But even then, the direction's a little rough. It has I don't know if I've ever said restless direction syndrome before.
I love it.
Is what I'm calling it. The camera just always needs to move no matter what. Any movement's better than no movement, right? Like it's directed maybe a little bit more like a video game than a movie. The only other notes I have on it are words just keep happening. And then I'm an hour in and I'm still wondering when the movie is going to start. And then just, Matt, what was all the things that happened? Because I thought you had seen it before. But so I guess I'm out of luck either way.
I just don't remember it. I barely remember Spirits Within or whatever the hell.
Have you played Final Fantasy VII?
That's the only one I've played start to finish, and I played that in
I
want to say my sophomore year of high school.
Okay, all right.
So that was like right after it came out, and I remember I played that with Noah and Heather Betke while they played.
Okay, shout out to Heather and Noah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Yeah, and even then you don't remember the movie, so okay. That's fine. I don't think we are the people to talk to at all right now about this. So we'll just move on from that one.
Let's move on to the one with Overwatch characters. I mean actors.
Oh, it's got some Overwatch voice actors in it?
Final Fantasy Kingsglaive does.
It's got Sean Bean in it, I know for sure.
Yeah, it's also got...
So the answer to your question is yes.
Yeah, it's got Darren DePaul in it. Darren DePaul is the voice of Reinhardt.
Right.
Also, hilariously, you know who else is in the Kingsglaive here? Lena Headey.
Oh, is she? Wait, I think Aaron Paul does a voice in here, not...
No, Aaron Paul does a voice. So does Darren DePaul. They're two different people.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
I will say this for that movie. I think you should watch it.
Yeah, it looks pretty like something.
I think the action is pretty legit, as the kids say. I don't know why I need to be old to talk about this movie.
How fast does Sean Bean die, though?
Yes, that was the answer to your question. And it's, I guess, halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the midway mark there to give some impetus.
Does he put in the same amount of effort dying animated as he does when he dies in human?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
great.
Great.
It's fantastic. He actually, I mean, he does a good. The movie is very competently voice acted. The animation, there are frames actually where you kind of can't tell the difference. Like that part of the Final Fantasy movies is back a little bit, like beyond the uncanny valley. And that's not, a reason to see the movie or anything, but I think the overall design of the movie, where it's like this kind of hyper Western, and I believe this is obviously connected to the actual game, the Final Fantasy 15 game, which I think was one of the games you sent me. So have you played that one?
Daisy played it, I think.
Daisy, okay, gotcha.
She was super into Final Fantasy. I was never, that was even as I never got into it.
Dude, watching this movie made me think about playing the game. So
all right,
that's something.
That's fun.
It's very complicated. Like it's by far, I think, the most complicated script of any of the movies. But the look is pretty great, and the exposition is enough, and the action sequences themselves are worth watching. So yeah, overall, I'd say like it's not a perfect movie, but it's pretty cool. I liked it. It might be actually Spirits Within, strangely enough, might still be at the top for me.
You're getting crazy.
It's just more simple. It's just a more popcorny thing. Like this one pulls far less punches. Like it's not afraid to be a little dense in a fine way.
And that stands to reason because that's definitely more along the lines of the games. They're all kind of dense.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my trip through Final Fantasy Land. That's all I got as far as that goes until they
next
make another,
up,
I guess.
The animated Resident Evil movies.
I do have those queued. Yeah,
I don't hate any of the ones. I think I've seen 2 of them. I'm not sure how many there are.
They don't have sequel names. Yeah, they're all subtitled, like even the first one, so I never know what order is what or anything. So yeah, someday. I have like 20 other rest of the show bits here, so it'll be again someday. In fact, I forgot to ask, did you watch The Hunt or finish Tenet in any way?
We have not yet. I still have.
Okay.
The Hunt is still very much so on my my list.
Those will be some rest of the shows. I would say watch The Hunt before Tenet.
Oh, I will definitely watch The Hunt before Tenet. Tenet's going to be just a struggle for me.
We might just be able to do Tenet because you said you've turned it off already, and honestly, I don't know if I want to tell you to go back. Maybe I can just tell you my experience, and then not right now, but
yeah, I mean that's possible. I just that movie is Christopher Nolan. Like it's like I swear I'm gonna get to the end of that movie, and I know I'm gonna go. He had one idea that he couldn't let go of, and he wrote a movie around that idea. Didn't matter if that idea worked for the ideas that he wrote around it or not. It was gonna be that.
Hey, yeah, and that's movie making to some extent. Like, by the end, did I make this work? Oh, I didn't? No, well,
I'm Christopher Nolan, so I'm gonna just make everybody think they're stupid.
$500 million later, and yes, 20 billion stupider people later. Whoops. So stay tuned for Tenet. Everybody come back. Sure. I'll talk about that. That'll be next week. We'll do the thing.
All right, I'll try.
It'll be great. We'll get it out of the way. Not the entire movie. The entire movie that we're doing next week, the show that we're doing next week is
News of the World. News of the World.
Thank you. So come back for that and email us at podcast@bookclubformovies.com again, or Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think of that thing. If you do, you're cool. And if you heard this, also you're great. Mm-hmm. Good job, everyone.
Bye!